Hello everyone, my name's Josh Hack from PGG Rights and Seeds.
And my name's Adam Finlayson from Inside Tech Pivot Fertilisers.
It's great to be back here at the Hunter Local Land Services demo site here at Singleton. Today we're going to have a chat just about some nutrient removal and nutrition in our pastures at the moment going through spring. So Adam, with the removal of for hay and silage and things like that, what sort of nutrient removal are we going to be looking at?
Well, you're going to be removing about 24 kilos of potassium per tonne of silage, and so if you've got a 3-tonne crop, you're going to be removing about 72 kilos of potassium per hectare.
Yeah, nice. And what about nitrogen?
Nitrogen's a little bit more. You're removing about 28 kilos of nitrogen per tonne. So if you're producing, once again, 3 tonnes per hectare, you're going to be removing about 78 kilos roughly.
So transitioning from that to a grazing situation, so you know, there's a lot of silage being made out there at the moment. It's important that we put those nutrients back in so we can get some responses from those pastures going forward. But when we transition and we look at grazing those paddocks, the recommendation is that we're sort of removing about that 20 to 50 kilos of nitrogen per rotation, okay, is the recommendations we should be applying. So if we were going to apply 50 units of nitrogen per hectare in a grazing rotation, what sort of rate would that be at urea?
Well, it'll be around about 100 kilos per hectare of urea, because urea is 46% nitrogen. So to replace that 50 kilos of nitrogen, you need that 100 kilos of urea.
Yeah, great. And what I'd recommend too is definitely getting out there and looking at urine stains, okay?
Yep.
So urine stains and cowpats will give us an indication of your nitrogen levels and potassium in the paddock. So if you're getting a big difference between your urine stains as to the rest of the paddock where you've been applying your fertiliser, there's potential there that you could possibly put some more fertiliser on to grow more feed. But also the other way, if you're not seeing those differences, maybe look at the rates that you have been using and see whether you can back that off as well. Absolutely,
and I'd also strongly recommend a few soil tests to make sure that you're not applying too much or too little for that matter.
Yes, fantastic. So now we might have a quick chat about timing. So the timing of the nitrogen we want to get on and the fertiliser, ideally we want to get it done straight after grazing or cutting of silage. And the reason we want to do that is that the plant responds straight away, pretty much within 3 days, the urea or the nitrogen is starting to work with the plant. Okay, so if we can apply it straight after grazing, okay, that plant's going to be able to access that fertiliser, okay, and then grow its first leaf. Okay, so if what we do know from science, especially with ryegrass, is that with that first leaf growing, if we can grow a bigger first leaf, so leaf emergence is all to do with temperature and light. Okay, so if we can grow a bigger first leaf, okay, that allows us to grow a bigger second leaf because it's got more photosynthesis ability. Okay, so if we get that nitrogen and the potassium and everything there available for when that plant responds post-grazing or silage, okay, we've got the ability to utilise more of that fertiliser to grow a bigger yield in that next grazing period. So that's timing. You can put it on, 2 or 3 days. We recommend, before grazing if you have to. It's just not ideal, but the reason people do it is just because they want to go and do a fair chunk of land. So they'll go and do some paddocks where it's 2 or 3 days before grazing. They do the last sort of 3 or 4 days where they've grazed, and that allows them to fertilise once a week and things like that. So Adam, what sort of withholding periods would you say for nitrogen applications that you would withhold grazing from?
We generally work on about 21 days, and that's from 2 perspectives. One is the risk to stock, and the other is the risk of nitrate poisoning to stock. So if the pasture sward is too lush, there is a risk that you could get nitrate poisoning in your stock. The risk of poisoning with the fertiliser, or the risk of poisoning the stock with the fertiliser is very, very low because, as you can imagine, the fertiliser is spread broadly and the cows, sheep, whatever, would have to go around picking up the little granules all over the place, so you'd be pretty hard pressed to hurt your stock with the actual fertiliser.
Yeah. So it's that initial 21 days after application,
yep,
with rapid take-up, okay, is when we're worried about feeding off those really fresh young leaves, which
yep,
could be high in nitrate. Adam, currently we've got some really good moisture and moisture availability coming. We've also got the predicted La Nina predicted for the East Coast as well. So that basically means that we could have above average rainfalls going into late spring and summer.
Yep.
So there is some risks around losses we talk about, and there's been a bit of research being done by the project up in Queensland, where they're starting to look at denitrification a bit more and also losses from east coast lows.
Yep.
Okay. So what's your recommendations about putting fertiliser out before big rain events?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There is benefit in putting fertiliser out before before rain events, but if it's likely to be a big rain event, it's probably not worthwhile because you risk losing a significant portion of that nitrogen through leaching and runoff.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's something that I've probably learnt in the last sort of 5 years being on the coast is, the clients I'm working with now is we're sort of talking and looking at the rainfall, and if we need nitrogen, we want to grow feed and we've got moisture there to grow it, and then we apply the nitrogen. But if we do see an east coast low forming or something that could be a plus 100 to 200 mil type events, we sort of delay the nitrogen to see what that event brings, just to help with some of those losses that may occur. So one thing I'd recommend, if anybody wants some more information around nitrogen use, is to look up Richard Eckhart on YouTube, and we'll put some links to these videos. He's got 3 videos there. He talks about application, timing, he talks about rates of nitrogen, and he also talks about the response rate. And the response rate is really, really important when we start looking at the cost associated with using nitrogen as a feed source. Okay, so if we're getting really good responses, for example, a 20-to-1 response, which is quite achievable at the moment, you put 50 kilos of nitrogen out, that's going to give us a ton of feed, okay, of good quality feed. And if you look at that nitrogen cost costing you about $70 a hectare to do that, you're looking at $70 a tonne of feed, which is still relatively cheap feed. So he talks about all those scenarios and how you would do that. So Adam, thanks very much. Thanks very much for everybody, and I hope you got a little bit out of that.